Hello, take number 4. This is episode number 2. Here are my notes for the day. So basically, I didn't really do much today. I watched Fargo. I also listened to a new album, not a new album, it's an old album by Wyclef called The Carnival, which was really good. But what I wanted to talk about today was the opening claim of factual basis in Fargo. Because in the original 1996 movie, it starts with a text that says, "This is a true story. The events depicted in this film took place in Minnesota in 1987. At the request of the survivors, the names have been changed. Out of respect for the dead, the rest has been told exactly as it occurred." So one would think after watching that they're watching a true story. But in the credits at the very end, it has the claim that every movie does that says the events that took place are fictitious. Any relation to real life persons, events, or things is entirely coincidental. So what's the point of that? And then the Coens never really fully explained it, but at one point they said that it was partly true and that Fargo was based on a murder, but they changed some stuff. And at another point they said it was completely fictitious. The DVD Blu-ray special features says that it was based on the 1986 Held Crafts murder because that had a wood chipper used in it. But really, the whole point, I feel like, of it is the fact that Fargo, it's a pretty graphic, violent movie. The Coens, I think, they knew that audiences wouldn't be on board with such a violent movie unless they thought it was a true story, because if they thought that the Coens had just created this violent story, people would be like, oh, that's distasteful, that's inappropriate, that's gratuitous. But because they say, oh, it's a true story, everyone's like, oh, well, we can't get mad at them for telling the true story. But then it's interesting because about 10, 15 years later, Fargo gets a TV show on FX run by someone completely different, Hawley, and now it's on its 5th season running right now, and each season opens with the same exact credits. It says, "This is a true story, the events, blah, 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 blah." Yet, these ones, the show has never made any claims in any interviews that it's based on any sort of truth. And there doesn't seem to be much discussion about whether it's true or false, which is interesting because then you start to wonder how many people are watching Fargo and thinking that this all did actually happen. And it just goes to show, I think, that audiences like to believe something's a true story. And when they do think it's a true story, they're more likely to enjoy it because it shows, an Oscar season, 90% of nominations are going to be movies that are based on true stories. People like an acting performance more when they're like, oh, he's playing a real person, let's judge him. Did he, like Austin Butler, for example, with Elvis, everyone was like, oh, he did such a good job. And Rami Malek with Freddie Mercury, because they're like, you can see the guy he's playing in real life and be like, oh, but that's not acting in my opinion, that's impersonation. And that's an impersonation or an impression. But I think that just goes to show that people are more willing to buy into a story when they can just say, oh, it's a true story. Which also then calls back to May December, because that movie is a true story, but the film is they never once say it's a true story when you're watching the movie. They changed all the names. It's kind of the opening text of Fargo would actually work perfectly in May December, but May December likes to kind of tease the audience more by playing with the idea of fiction. So basically, I think it's interesting how that's just what's on my mind for the second day of the year. The inability of audiences to enjoy a story unless they know it's real or based on some truth. It even goes to, I was watching American History X, and after I watched it, I was more interested in the fact that the screenwriter based it on his own childhood experiences in San Diego. But why should that matter? The movie should be able to stand on its own. And I don't know, it just shows that we grasp for truth in fiction when, by definition, fiction should be fake. So I don't know, that's just the thing I'm thinking about right now. So